This is the underpinning, the undergirding theme of the entire film, and that is family and fatherhood, especially. There are lots of messages and thematic undertones that are held throughout the entire story, and many of them play directly with the story in such a way that without them you don't have a story. And so the first one that I want to talk about, this is the underpinning, the undergirding theme of the entire film, and that is family and fatherhood, especially. What are you willing to do to protect your family? And what does it look like when your choice maybe isn't the best course? What's the conflict that you have with your spouse, especially a spouse who is a warrior like Neytiri that thinks that you should stay and you should fight and that that's the best way to solve things? Jake takes a very different approach. What does that marital issue look like, and how do you come together anyway? How do you push through this? And I love the relationship between Jake and the relationship. Sheep. Meh. Sorry. I love the relationship between Jake and Neytiri here, because we get to see conflict, not like Neytiri had with Jake early, which is in the first movie, which is very much, you're an outsider, you're an outcast, you're a baby, I can't believe I have to teach you. And through the course of that kind of falling in love, which is a very cute story, this one's very much a mother going to bat for her children, a wife who thinks that the best way to protect the family is to stay and fight, and who in many ways is in opposition, direct opposition to her husband, which is a good thing. This is a good thing. I just recently got married, which is wild and crazy and huzzah, and we had a rabbi, a Messianic Jewish rabbi, marry us, and we did some premarital counseling before we got married. And one of the things that we talked about is how in the original Hebrew, what we come in English to understand as helpmeet in the book of Genesis, whenever it's talking about Adam and Eve, actually means a helper against you in the original Hebrew. And it's this wonderful idea of, if I can only control the movement of my fist so much, right? I can only go so far and be so precise. However, if I have an opposing force to help regulate what I'm doing, I can be more precise and ultimately make better movements and have a higher quality of movement in my own body when there's something resisting against me. And this is also one of the things that makes us stronger. This is why weightlifting and going to the gym and stuff, how often do you have to use resistance, literally called resistance training, in order to become stronger? All the time. And so having this helper against you, it makes you stronger as a person. And it also helps you be more precise and keep you from just running off the edge into oblivion. And we see that kind of resistance happening between Jake and Neytiri. However, there are amazing shots of these two just being happy together in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the hell that they go through, being in love. And it's almost always centered around their children. It's almost always centered around this idea of family and how neither of them would be who they've become without their family. And that is such a unique and critical idea for Hollywood to be putting out. Not that it's a unique and critical idea to stories over the course of history. They're actually relatively normal, or were for a while. However, as moving and as critical and as quintessential, as true and good and beautiful as that story is, we never see it anymore. Until now, and it was such a refreshing breath of to me and to so many other people, to my wife who went and saw it with me all 3 times. She's actually seen it 4 times. At some times, I wonder if she should be the one giving this review. The next thing that they talk about is James Cameron. Another message that they sort of push is James Cameron is very intentional about saying, you know, with all of the sort of feminist movements, with all of the activism that's going on today, we don't really see Hollywood taking on this idea of women being strong through pregnancy. Pregnancy is something that defines a woman, the ability to bear a child. And yet, when we look at Hollywood, we always see the feminist movement pushing this idea of how the strong, independent woman is the one that doesn't need kids. It's the one that's going to further her career. It's the one that's going to, or that doesn't need no man. And yet, in this film, they push the boundary. They push the feminist movement towards a direction that it should be going, and that is the idea that pregnancy is good, starting a family is a good, it is a quintessential, essential thing, it is a literal superpower, and you can be strong through it. You don't have to be barefoot and pregnant. That whole idea is asinine. As a matter of fact, as men, we appreciate a woman that is going to show strength through the adversity of bearing a child. The fact that you're not helpless, you're not hopeless, that you can still do all of these things, and we are there to support you, and it makes us want to support you more. This is really cool to see them take this on, not only in the way of the women are strong while they're pregnant, but they are warriors. Within the first opening minutes of the film, we see Natiri, and you see this in the trailers of the film as well, so I'm not spoiling anything here. You see Natiri drawing back a bow while she's pregnant. That's really cool. And it's cool culturally because in this idea where you're from a tribe and everyone has to contribute in order for the tribe itself to survive, you as a woman would not just get pregnant and expect everyone else to go out and do everything for you, especially not if you're Neytiri. It also makes a lot of sense for her character. You would not expect everyone else to do everything for you. You're a strong person. You're a warrior. You would have this expectation of yourself, and I would hope that the society that you come from would have this expectation as well, that you are intended to still provide. And so what does Natiri do? She goes and she hunts. And you see this moment because she first draws back the bow and kind of forgets that she's pregnant. And she's like, okay, I can't draw it the way I normally would. Let me kick the bow out a little bit. Let me get a different angle on it so that I can take it to full draw and make room for my belly. And that's awesome. And then later in the show, you have Renal, who is the Sa'ik of the Metkaina. And due to circumstances, she has to go, or the Metkaina people are called to war, right? I'm not ruining anything for you. You know this. It's in the trailers. They're riding the water dragon banshee kind of things. They're not banshees. They're definitely not Ikran, like we know the Ikran, which is what they call the banshees, but they're kind of this water banshee equivalent. You see them going to war. So leading up to that, Renal and Tonawati, her husband, are walking into their sort of hut in the reef, and she goes and she grabs a spear and she turns back around. And at this point, she's very pregnant. Throughout the course of the movie, you actually watch her pregnancy progress. And it helps you get a feeling for how much time has passed in the movie, in the world of the movie, even though time is passing for you as well. It's a 3-hour movie, but it gives you a sense of how many months are passing as to the state of her pregnancy. And she is very pregnant at the point that this happens. This is very late in the movie. She goes and she grabs a spear and she turns around, and Tonawati puts a hand on her and he says, I think that you should stay back. She barely saves him a glance and says, I ride, and she walks away. This is really cool because this is a woman whose children are in danger. I'll give you that reasoning as to why she's going to war, is because her children are in danger. And so it's this moment where Tonawati's like, you should stay back. It's for your safety. It's for the child's safety. Maybe you shouldn't go. And in her brain, there's no question. She has just as much a duty to protect the baby inside of her, to protect the children that she has given birth to, as she does to protect the baby inside of her. So what? She rides. It's expected. Or even if it's not expected, it's what she does, because that is who she is and what she believes and how she chooses to value her children. And that is really cool. And the last sort of point from a character perspective that I want to talk about that's really good is this idea of facing your problems instead of running from them. If you don't want to hear some spoilers from the film any more than I've already given, you can skip. I'll leave a timestamp in the area below. But this next portion is going to have some pretty significant spoilers because it has to do with Jake's arc over the course of the story. And we'll go from there. This is also a great chance for me to tell you, if you guys are liking this content and you want more cool things, or you want to help me and Forerunner Productions actually make movies instead of just talking about them and reviewing them, because that's something that we do. I do the podcasting thing as sort of a side hobby. How I actually make my money is by going and working in Hollywood, and that is going to eventually culminate with wanting to make and fund our own movies. I'm actually writing scripts right now and helping build worlds and all of this other cool stuff. If you want to be a part of that and you want to be a part of our original content, head over to forerunnerproductions.locals.com. Again, that's forerunnerproductions.locals.com. If you're on Rumble, you'll be able to see a link to it somewhere around here, there maybe. I don't know. I'll figure this out. And we're kind of new to Rumble as well, but and I will put a link in the description on YouTube as well for you guys. So just head down there for the link in the description to go to Forerunner Productions, or you can go to forerunnerproductions.locals.com, become a subscriber or become an annual subscriber. Annual subscribers, when we do release the full content, that all of that stuff that we distribute to you guys on our Locals channel is going to be free to you. If you are a month-to-month subscriber, you'll be able to see our feature-length films and stuff like that come out for $10-15 a pop. Just like you're sort of buying it on Amazon or whatever. But the best way to get that is to become an annual subscriber at forerunnerproductions.locals.com. We'll also have short films and stuff like that. We're helping get the names out of some really talented young people in this industry. I can't wait to share all of that stuff with you. Okay, so Jake facing his problems is a huge point to this. Not only is he facing the problem of what do I do to protect my family, but also how do I be a father in the midst of war? And this is really interesting. And it comes to a point where he decides to prioritize his need to be a father above his need to be a warrior. And he actually tries to kill the warrior inside of him and just be a father. And this is what leads Jake to leaving the Omaticaya clan and going to the Metcaina clan. He leaves the forest and he goes to the sea. This culminates. It's a beautiful thing, first of all, because it shows a real story of a man that has to die to himself to try and protect his family. And he has to also justify this to his wife, who is a warrior, who wants him to stay and fight. And he makes a statement where he's like, I've got no plan. I have nothing left. I don't know how else I'm going to make this happen. It's like, I don't know. The only thing that he does know is where he might go. To get off the grid, to start over, start a new life, to make a new home. And maybe, just maybe by doing that, someone else can carry on the fight. And the reason why is because Quaritch is back. He has a run-in with Quaritch where his kids get literally put under Quaritch's knife and they barely escape. And this is the climactic moment from the first act where he's like, I got to get out. I got to take my family and we got to go. And so they do. They run and they go to the Metcaina clan, and they become, instead of forest people, they become water people. Okay. It's a good sacrifice. It may not have been the right choice. And this is highlighted from a speech that Quaritch gives. So the movie goes on. Quaritch kidnaps the kids again. He has Kitty under his knife. He's getting ready to kill Kitty unless Jake goes with him, Quaritch is. And through a turn of events with Neytiri, I'll leave kind of that stuff out, but Neytiri kind of comes in saving the day, much like she did in the first movie. Actually, in a very different way than she did in the first movie this time. One of the most absolute crazy, wild, adrenaline pumping shots in the entire film is from Neytiri during this. And anyway, she steps in, Quaritch lets Kitty go, and the Sully family is disappearing into the water. And Quaritch says, are you really going to go? Knowing that I'm out there? Knowing that I'm not going to stop coming? And whenever I do, I'm not just coming for you, I'm going to kill your whole family. And so now Jake, much like before, has a choice. He can continue to do what he's been doing, thinking that it's going to be a solution to the problem, or he's going to decide here and now to face his problem head on In the first movie, Jake's not the one that won the fight with Quaritch. It was Neytiri. So now in this movie, we finally get that climactic finality, that sort of bow, the tie on the present of not only does what Jake do as a person, what does he do for his family, and what is the ultimatum between him and Quaritch? All three of these things are playing out. And that's one of the things that you can use, I'm going to take a side tangent here, to know whether or not you have a good script or not. Are three things happening in every scene? Are three things happening in pretty much every moment of your movie? This is a beautiful climax of three things occurring all at the same time in this film. Three overarching plot lines that need to be tied together and are tied together, and that are all culminated in this final fight between Quaritch and Jake. And so Jake turns, and instead of killing the warrior inside of him, he lets the warrior flare up. He lets the warrior come back. He feeds it, and he says, let's get it done. It's not something that he exactly wants to do. A warrior is who he is, yes. It's part of who Jake is as a person. He was a jarhead first. He sold himself he was able to sell himself as a warrior to get into the Omaticaya clan in the first place, in the first movie. And now we see Jake actually moving into this phase where he's like, maybe being a warrior for the rest of my life isn't what I want to do, but I know it. So let's get it done. And so he goes back and he fights Quaritch, and ultimately does get this finality. Jake beats Quaritch in this moment, and that is quintessential to the story. And I also think it's quintessential to the reason why Jake is not going to be narrating the next movie. And like I said, I'll do an entire video on all of that. Okay, if you've jumped to this point in the story, there aren't any more real spoilers other than the fact, like, hey, they go to the ocean and there are Pandora whales. Okay? You've known this if you've watched any of the trailers, so I'm not really ruining anything with that. However, it's important to note this because a major undergirding theme of the first movie was stewardship of the environment. Okay, this is one of the hills that or this is one of my soapboxes that I get on all the time, is that especially as Christians, I'm a Christian, as I've mentioned before, especially as Christians, we seem to take the Bible at its word when it says that God gave us dominion, and then completely throw out the idea that not only the Old Testament, but also Jesus Christ tells us that we should steward the things that have been given to us. We should steward our environment, that we should not just take dominion over it, but we should act to protect it, to take care of it. What individual goes and sorry, I wouldn't say what individual, there are plenty of people that do this. However, we know that there is something typically kind of wrong about having a house per se, and then letting it get filthy. There is something akin to responsibility playing itself out when you take care of the things that you have purchased or bought or that you own. Well, we own this planet. It's been given to us, dominion of it by God, and yet for some reason we decide that we want to trash it. Or that whenever we see a film that has a environmental-based message to it, we think that for some reason that is inherently anti-Christian or goes against our views, and it's actually the exact opposite. People need to take more notice and pay more attention to how it is that we are treating this planet. And this is a great point that all of the Avatar movies talk about. However, that there are some sort of caveats for the fantasy, the interconnection with Eowa and all this other stuff that allows the Na'vi people to have a deeper connection with nature than what it is actually possible for us to have, because we don't have a way of interlinking our neural pathways with animals or interlinking our neural pathways with planets. It's just not a thing. So from a fantasy perspective, yes, there's absolutely a fantasy caveat for being more involved in the, or a caveat for the deeper connection that the Na'vi have with their environment. However, the undergirding message of pay attention and take care of the thing that's been given to you is really important, and it's something that we need to pick up on. I'm glad that that message still persists in this film. I'm glad that they take a look at the oceans whenever you do, when you look at the amount of trash and crap that exists in our oceans, it's actually really scary to know that there is, in the Pacific Ocean, an entire sort of plateau of trash that's bigger than the state of Texas. That should sort of open your eyes. That's a big deal. And I'm not saying that we should not be, should we abandon capitalism. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we should abandon manufacturing or the things that we've come to sort of ease our lives and take away some of the burdens of existing in our life on this planet. However, we shouldn't then hoist that burden on the plants and animals that have been created in tandem with us. We should be taking care of them somehow. This particular movie addresses the idea of whaling a bit more. It's a pretty big idea. It's pretty obvious correlation between some of the things that happen in this film and what the whaling industry does. And I mostly agree with everything they do. The coolest thing is that it doesn't feel, none of these messages feel preachy. They're present and they play a pivotal part in the story. And the way that they are shown actually invites you to take the problem more seriously rather than telling you to take the problem seriously. It's an invitation to notice something rather than saying, how dare you not understand where I'm coming from? How dare you not try and take this more seriously? How dare you try and waste your time and money? The movie understands that maybe that's not going to be for everyone. However, it is something that's really important to Cameron. And so he puts that out there. Okay, lastly, the visuals. The movie is gorgeous. That's one of the reasons why it's been nominated so many times for the visuals. Like, yes, is it CG? Absolutely. The motion capture is still great, but the way that they did this thing was amazing. Now, some people are complaining that sometimes it looks like a video game. Yes, that is not the theater's fault. Some people are trying to blame that on the movie theaters or on the screens. It's not the theater's fault. James Cameron chose to render this film in 48 frames per second instead of 24 frames per second, okay? So he doubled it. What that does is that gives some of the motion that you have from your actors and stuff like that, from your characters, it makes it look smoother. And that smoother look to everything is actually abnormal to our eye. That's the reason why I'm shooting this video in 24 frames per second, because that's how you like to see things with your eye. 48 frames per second, your eye picks up more things that it's not used to picking up in your regular life, and it reads it as abnormal. And so that's why it looks kind of video gamey. It looks too smooth for what it should be. That was a choice, the choice to render it in 48 frames per second. As I understand it, I could be wrong, as I understand it, the water specifically renders better at a higher frame rate. You get more of the nuances of the water's motion. That is one thing that our eye picks up better at a higher frame rate than at a lower frame rate. And so because of the emphasis of so much of the film taking place in water, with water dripping off of characters and all this other stuff, because of that emphasis on the film and the necessity of that being perfect, right, for lack of a better phrase, necessitated that the film be rendered or suggested that the film should be rendered in a higher frame rate in 48 frames instead of 24. As I understand it, like I said, that's why he decided to, James Cameron, that's why he decided to render it that way. And it's a stylistic choice. Love it or hate it, that's what it is. Okay, once again, guys, thank you so much for sticking around for the good portion of my review. Stick around for part 2, where we're going to talk about the bad and the ugly of what Avatar might mean, especially when it comes to implications of the technology in filmmaking in the future. Thank you guys so much for sticking out for this thing. I hope that you enjoyed it. Leave us a comment, smash the like button, share it to all your friends, and head on over to forerunnerproductions.locals.com. Again, that is forerunnerproductions.locals.com, or check the link in the description. Also, we have new things on our website. We have some coffee mugs with Forerunner Productions logos on them. If you guys want to try and grab one of those, you can go to forerunnerproductions.com/shop. Or, like I said, that's forerunnerproductions.com/shop, and we'll make sure that you get your coffee mug there. And we're going to be adding more merch things, especially as we have more of our own IP to share at Forerunner Productions. And so if you want to get different things like that, and make sure that you're checking in at the Forerunner Productions website every now and then. I'll make sure to let you guys know when we have investment opportunities and stuff like that coming up for our films. And that doesn't mean that you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to put into a film, even though that's what films cost. They cost millions of dollars to make. You guys can be a part of that journey of helping us reach that milestone through different means. And I'll tell you more about that in a different video. But for now, have a great day. Thanks for nerding out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.